Well, the primary is over and Oregonians made their voices heard at the ballot box. What an overwhelming no on the gas tax increase means for ODOT. Plus, Washington leaders pushing back on AI Medicare software, why they say it's actually slowing down care for seniors.
You ready?
And it's National Dog Rescue Day. Find out how Oregon Humane is training dogs for their new forever homes. We start with breaking news. The Trump administration has indicted former Cuban President Raul Castro, tied to the 1996 shoot-down of 2 civilian aircraft. Castro, Cuba's defense minister at the time, is charged with conspiracy to kill U.S. nationals, murder, and destruction of an aircraft. And good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. I'm Tim Gordon. The attack killed 4 men, including 3 Americans, when Cuban fighter jets shot down planes operated by the exile group Brothers to the Rescue. Raul, the brother of Fidel Castro, is now 94 years old and one of the last surviving leaders of the Cuban Revolution. Well, results are still pouring in from Oregon's primary election, and we're keeping an eye on high-profile races across the state. And to start, Oregon voters have decisively rejected Measure 120. That's the statewide transportation funding measure that would have raised gas taxes and other fees to help fund road maintenance projects across the state. Early results, show more than 83% of voters oppose that measure. Now state leaders are left figuring out what comes next for ODOT and transportation funding. Corey Johnson is in the studio this morning with a breakdown.
Measure 120 would have upheld parts of a transportation funding package passed by lawmakers last year, including a 6-cent gas tax hike, higher vehicle registration and titling fees, and an increase to the transit payroll tax. But voters rejected it in a landslide, with more than 83%, around 900,000 people, voting no in early returns Tuesday night. Now, the funding package was designed to help ODOT deal with a growing budget crisis. This as gas tax revenue declines and costs continue to rise. Now, lawmakers passed a slimmed-down version of the bill during a special session last fall, but a Republican-led group quickly gathered enough signatures to put the tax and fee hikes on the ballot. Without that new funding, ODOT previously said it faced a funding gap of about $242 million this year.
And that's a message. That's not just a vote. That's not just an anti-tax message to me. That's also an accountability for how tax dollars were spent. And that should be a big part of the discussion between, whoever the Republican candidate is and the governor. There's going to be accountability messaging that needs to happen ahead of November.
Now that voters have rejected the measure, lawmakers will likely have to go back to the drawing board in order to come up with another long-term transportation funding plan for the state.
Corey Johnson, thank you very much. And we talked to Senator Jeff Merkley this morning. He said he's not surprised Oregonians said no in a big way to the transportation funding measure, saying the timing just wasn't right.
We know that everyone has pressed the wall, and especially with the cost of transportation going up with the Iran war, it's no surprise that this measure went down. People do want more infrastructure and transportation, but they can't afford it at this moment.
We talked to Merkley about his easy primary win and also about efforts to stop Republican spending plans for ICE and for the president's ballroom. We'll have more in our later newscast today. And as for last night's primary, Merkley is going for his 4th term in the Senate and will advance to the general election. He collected more than 90% of the votes from Democrats. As I said, an easy win for him. And we don't know yet who he's going to face just yet. Currently, State Senator David Brocksmith of Curry and Coos counties is in the lead for the GOP. Joe Ray Perkins and Brent Barker are following close behind, both with more than 20% of the vote. Another major race we're following is who will go up against Tina Kotek in November's gubernatorial race. The AP and the Oregonian projecting State Senator Christine Drazen to win the Republican nomination for governor. Here's more from our panel of experts last night on what we can expect from this rematch between Kotek and Drazen.
Looking at a rematch against Governor Kotek 4 years on this November. She says she's a different candidate this time. She says a lot has changed and Governor Kotek has had 4 years to prove herself and has either the wrong priorities or the inability to execute them. Give me a sense, do you think a Republican can win this cycle in Oregon?
I think it will be the same challenge it's always been, that we have an electorate that has voted for a party, that has voted for a movement and a position for decades. It will be very hard to change that. I do think that Senator Drazen, with some familiarity, experience, she's gone toe-to-toe, will make that rematch interesting.
Meanwhile, a Beaverton City Council candidate is facing charges for menacing with a gun. Beaverton police say Antonio Pirogue, a candidate for City Council Position 5, was involved in an incident Monday afternoon. Investigators say Pirogue allegedly showed he was armed with a handgun near the Beaverton City Library, causing someone to call 911. We don't know what led up to the confrontation yet. Police arrested Pirogue on charges of menacing and unlawful use of a weapon. Let's switch gears now and take a live look from our Rose City Sky camera. A little cloudy out there to start. Chris, what's next for the afternoon?
Eventually some sun, but this is one of those days where it's going to take a little while. I do think we will see sun this afternoon, but yeah, it's cloudy on the Rose City Sky camera. It's 56 right now, by the way, in downtown Portland. It's cloudy over Vancouver, but as you look off to the east, you can kind of see maybe a little blue line there out near the Cascades. The cloud cover is slowly eroding around the edges, and it's going to take a while, but I think eventually we do see some sun here in Portland. All right, let's get you going here with our... well, it just went right past all the sky cameras that I wanted to show you. I'm going to back this up real quick and go back to Salem right now. You can see that it's actually clear in Salem. The end of the cloud cover actually extends to about Wilsonville. If you're south of Wilsonville, you're actually seeing sunshine this afternoon, and it's currently 62 in Salem. It's also sunny out towards the Dalles. We'll advance this real quick. The little broken cloud cover around Mount Hood. But otherwise a good looking afternoon out there as well, with temperatures already into the 70s. So here's a look at the visible satellite imagery, and you can see the cloud cover snugging up into the Cascades and through the North Oregon Coast Range, and we are eroding that cloud cover around the edges. So it's going to take a while, but eventually we should see some clearing today, and as a result, temperatures will eventually warm up. It's a little chilly out there right now, but I've got us in the low 60s at 2, and then we bounce into the low 70s around 5 o'clock to finish off the day. We will see sun late in the afternoon with a sunset of 8:40. You know, it helps when the sunset is so late that I can promise clearing late in the day. How late is the question? I think it happens sometime between 2 and 3 o'clock. Back to you.
All right. Thanks, Chris, very much. New at noon, Washington Senators Maria Cantwell and Patty Murray are introducing a resolution to overturn a Medicare pilot program that uses AI to review some medical procedures for seniors. They say the WISER program is delaying care for patients in Washington state, with some hospitals reporting wait times have doubled or even quadrupled. The program uses artificial intelligence to help process prior authorizations for certain treatments under traditional Medicare. The senators argue the system is overruling doctors and leaving some seniors waiting weeks for pain treatment and other care. Well, voters cast primary ballots in 6 states on Tuesday, setting the stage for November's critical midterm elections. It was also a chance for President Trump to demonstrate his influence, weighing in on a handful of races. Alice Barr has the latest.
President Trump notching another victory in his scorecard of Republican foes ousted from Congress with his hand-picked challenger Ed Galrein.
I want to thank President Trump for his support.
Projected to topple 7-term Kentucky Congressman Thomas Massie, who defended the times he bucked his party.
If the legislative branch always votes with the president, we do have a king.
Clashes with Massie over the budget, the war with Iran, and the Epstein files angered President Trump.
Thomas Massie's a terrible congressman.
The president now setting his sights on a Texas Republican Senate runoff, pitting longtime incumbent Senator John Cornyn against Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who just picked up President Trump's endorsement.
He thinks I'm the best candidate and that I will actually help him get some of these things done.
The president on Truth Social called Cornyn a good man he'd worked well with, but said, quote, he was not supportive of me when times were tough. Cornyn responding to the Paxton endorsement.
I think that will certainly have an impact, but we're not giving up the fight.
The power of the president's backing on full display, even as his approval ratings are falling, with control of the House and Senate on the line. In another race critical to that power battle, Georgia Republican Congressman Mike Collins and former football coach Derek Dooley projected to be headed for a Senate runoff to take on Democratic incumbent Senator Jon Ossoff in a battleground state key to deciding the fate of the president's agenda in Congress. In Washington, Alice Barr, NBC News.
And here's a look at some national headlines this afternoon. Today, 2 American doctors are arriving in Europe for treatment after being exposed to the Ebola virus in the Congo. One man is now being treated in Berlin. Another person is set to land in Prague tonight. There are now an estimated 600 cases and 139 deaths caused by the rare strain of the virus, which was discovered in Central Africa. The World Health Organization has issued a global health emergency and warns a vaccine is months away at best. Former Democratic Congressman Barney Frank has died at the age of 86. Frank, who represented Massachusetts, was the first member of Congress to voluntarily come out as gay and built a reputation on Capitol Hill for being an outspoken progressive leader and trailblazer for gay rights. He was in hospice care earlier this year for congestive heart failure.